Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work and life in a more successful and sustainable way. If you're a mum that often feels like you've got too much going on, that you're constantly thinking or worrying or planning or doing, if your mind feels like your internet browser that's got 101 tabs open at any one time, if you feel like you're spinning too many plates and your mind could explode with all the things running through it, then this episode is for you. Today we're talking about meditation. But before you might think that meditation stuff is great for people who have time, or I love the idea of meditation, but I'm a busy working mum, how the hell is that possible in my life? Or that meditation stuff just sounds weird and is for people who live up the mountains in Tibet. Let me share with you a secret. I used to think all those things before I met today's guest. Jo Royle is a meditation teacher, a coach and a working mum of two, and she's been teaching people the art of meditation across the UK for the past 7 years. She's my meditation teacher, and when I discovered Jo and her work, it's not an exaggeration to say it changed my life. I'll share more on this story during the episode. But in this episode, Jo and I explore what meditation is, why would you want to meditate, how to actually meditate, even if you're a busy working mum with no time and no space in your life, what you might experience both in meditation and over time if you make it a regular practice. And I can't wait for you to dive into this episode and hear all the amazing nuggets that Jo shares with me. She also guides us through a little mini meditation, which is beautiful. But if you're listening to this whilst driving, please skip that bit or pull over, because we wouldn't want you meditating while driving. That would just be dangerous. And if you're listening to this when it launches, which is just before Christmas, this could be the secret sauce that leaves you loving the festivities and not feeling frazzled. And if you're not listening to it when it launches, well, meditation can have a profound impact on your life, I promise you, from personal experience, no matter what time of year it is. But as always, I'd love to hear your feedback once you've dived in and listened to this episode. So head over to the Wisdom for Working Mums Facebook page or Instagram page and drop me a note and let me know your thoughts and feedback, because it really makes my day to hear how people are listening to and absorbing these podcasts, because I always love to hear from you. So dive in and enjoy. So welcome, Jo. I am so pleased to have you on this call, because as you know, we've known each other for a little while now, and you've been an integral part of my journey as a working mum to do it without losing my sanity. So I can't wait to share you and your work with the Wisdom for Working Mums audience.
Thanks, Nikki. It's great to be here.
So for those that don't know about you and the work that you do, could you share that with us, please?
Yeah, so amongst other things, I'm a working mum myself. I do various things, but amongst other things, I teach a meditation practice. So just to say a little bit about my journey with meditation, probably I think it's just over 10 years ago. I was working as a coach, doing one-to-one coaching, and I went on a course actually, and what really came up for me on this course was I wanted to better access my intuition. So it was a coaching course, and I had these amazing facilitators, and they were really intuitive. And I felt that if I could better access my intuition, I could be a better coach. So if I could pick up what was going on in the conversation and be able to share it back with people, have the courage to share it back with people, it would really up my coaching. And something told me, here's me looking for intuition, and something, probably an intuition, told me that meditation was going to help me with that. So I decided to go on a journey to learn meditation. So I went off to a Buddhist center. I was like, okay, who knows about meditation? Buddhists know about meditation. So I took myself to this Buddhist meditation center. I was living in Lancashire at the time, and I went across to Yorkshire, to Keighley, to the Buddhist meditation center there, and wanted to learn about meditation, and had a really lovely day, and the people I met were lovely, and the food, and it was all lovely. But when it came to meditate, the person who was running the session would say, okay, we're going to meditate now for 20 minutes. And so if you want to close your eyes, so we'd close our eyes. And then it became apparent that we were just going to be left for 20 minutes. And so I'd sit there with my eyes closed and think, okay, meditate. Okay, so what's meditation? Oh. And invariably within seconds I'd be going, okay, so I'd be thinking about things, then I'd be opening my eyes and checking if there was anyone else still in the room, and just distracting myself basically. So I realized after having a lovely day that I still needed to learn how to meditate, and so I found somebody in Cumbria, a lady called Eliza Harrison, and I learnt to meditate with her. And she had lots of different teachers over the years, and learnt lots of different practices. And so what she'd kind of distilled this teaching, I suppose, through her own practice and teaching others. And it was a kind of a really effortless practice. So I went and learnt with her, and learning, it gave me what I wanted to know. So I don't know, maybe if you have a clearer mind anyway, I don't know, you don't need to tell your mind what it's going to do, but I needed some practicalities. I needed to know why I was doing it, how to actually meditate, and she taught me that. So,
and having experienced your training, I think that is such an important aspect of this, Jo, because I imagine if anybody's listening to this that may have been on a meditation course or training or tried it, which I had prior to doing training with you, I found that whenever I tried to go into meditation, I'd sit there going, am I doing it right? What is the right way? And I'd have this huge mind chatter, which was okay, but left me feeling like I was failing in some way or didn't know what I was doing. And I think having you had that experience and then found this effortless meditation, which I know we'll get into, I want anybody listening that may have tried it before or has some kind of resistance to it, that actually this is why I've invited Jo on this podcast. I think there's something really special in the effortless meditation approach.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later when we talk about the practice, but it really... it did help me to have it explained. And there's a diagram which I use to explain what's happening when we meditate. It's kind of a representation of the mind, and it's the way my teacher taught me. And there's a video link that we can share that explains that a bit more. But it's a really simple way of understanding what's going on in the mind and what meditation's doing and why we meditate, the purpose of meditation.
Yeah. And I know you and I had a conversation actually that I'd shared on social media, an image that I think any mum, and particularly working mum, can relate to, this image of kind of loads of thought bubbles, the 1,000,001 internet browser tabs that we've got open about whether it's, the emails we've got to respond to, the dog needs taken to the vet, what are the kids going to have for dinner tonight, times a million, and how actually this diagram that we'll put a link to in the show notes explains how meditation kind of takes you above that and out of that, which when it happens is the most profound experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm thinking back to when I learned, and that was my experience of it. I learned from the course, and then the practice is intended to be a 20-minute daily practice. So then I left and started doing this practice. And, at the time I was pregnant with my second child. My first was probably 3 at the time, and I was working maybe 4 days a week, and so life was pretty busy as a working mum, and I had all that stuff to deal with, keep everything running, keep the house running, my daughter at nursery, deal with my pregnancy, keep everything happening at work. And I can remember really vividly, making it happen, fitting it in, and noticing the days where I wasn't fitting it in, feeling like I rushed from one thing to another. And the days, actually, I think at the time I was getting up early in the morning to do it, but that's not part of this practice. You don't have to do that. It can be fit in at any time of the day. But at the time I was probably getting up at 6:30, which maybe isn't even early for some people. But doing the practice and then noticing how I didn't feel on the back foot all day. I felt like, breakfast happened fine. We got to nursery. I got to work. I did a good day's work. And, everything happened again in reverse. And it all seemed to flow much more easily. So I talk about the practice being effortless, but also I think it puts us on a path to a more effortless life. I think if we're meditating regularly, life feels like it's more in flow.
Which is, and I'm sure so many people are listening going, I need a bit of that, because I know when I came to you, I was at that point in my life where, I was incredibly irritable, that, the smallest thing would trip me into kind of irritability, and I was really struggling. I was fighting time, fighting the day, exhausted, and was actually at a place where I was like, I haven't got time to meditate. It all sounds great, but I haven't got time for it. But actually, when I made the time, it was pretty transformational, and was part of if anybody's listened before, they may have heard me talk about, after I had my firstborn, I ended up getting adrenal fatigue, and meditation was, and Jo's teaching and then doing that regular practice was part of my kind of journey back to recovery. So I'm a huge supporter of what you do, Jo, and what you teach.
Yeah, and it's lovely. It's always lovely to hear stories of people that are still doing it, and stories of the benefits and the difference it makes in people's lives when they make it a regular practice.
And we'll come more onto that later, because making the regular practice can be a challenge in itself. But you then went off and made teaching meditation your full-time career, didn't you? Would you mind talking a bit about that?
So it wasn't intentional, or at least not by me. It may have been by bigger forces. But what happened was the job that I was getting up early to meditate before to deal with, I found myself redundant from at the end of 2011. And I'd just gone back to work after having my son. So it felt like, and actually I'd been made redundant after having my daughter too. So this was the second time in less than 4 years, and both, fairly soon after having my children. And I could have really gone to a bad place, I think, at that time. But I really think the meditation helped me stay on track and helped me stay open to something new. So instead of going into despair, what actually happened was we started to look at finances and look at how much we were spending just to go to work. Yeah. And it really flipped life for us. And so that, alongside this regular meditation practice, where I would go into the practice and ask for whatever next to come, and state this intention of being open, I really felt like it was a new phase of life. And what came really through the meditation practice, I think, was to move to Yorkshire and to live quite a different life. So we actually moved into a caravan in Yorkshire, and we reduced our living costs quite dramatically. We also reduced our income quite dramatically, so we had more time and more space and could spend more time with the children. And from that, then, this desire, initially it was to run leadership retreats in Yorkshire and to have meditation as part of them. Mm-hmm. And so I went on a teacher training course with my teacher after a few years of practice already, a regular practice, to then learn to teach meditation. And it was it was a week, that was all. I mean, an intensive week in the lakes. And I remember some of the draw of that was to go and stay in a cottage on my own in the lakes for a week when the children were quite young, and put it down to personal development so I could put it through my accounts. and thinking, oh, I can spend a whole week just on me. It felt amazing. And then to be on that course and to hear someone come and talk who had been on a previous course and talk about how they were now running day courses in meditation. And it landed with me like I don't know what. It just was like, oh, this has nothing to do with leadership retreats. I'm supposed to teach meditation. I'm supposed to run courses. And it was just like so obvious. It just felt really clear that this was part of my journey and that I was supposed to go out and teach meditation. And so I ran my first course within weeks of being on that course, and 8 people came.
Which is amazing for a first course.
Yeah. And it just felt like it just really, reinforced this idea of it was what I was supposed to do. And then I don't know how, it's through the meditation, I would say again, we got to the point in 2014, we moved into a bus as a family. So myself, my husband and 2 children, with the plan to travel around the UK for a year, to drive around the coast of the UK. And for me, part of that was this quest to teach 500 people to meditate, or to continue to teach 500 people to meditate. So I now live on the Isle of Skye, which is where we ended up on that journey. We didn't quite make it all the way around the coast, but that journey happened.
And Jo, I'm conscious that some of my listeners are not in the UK. So for anybody that's kind of might be around the world, can you just kind of describe where the Isle of Skye is and what it's like? Because I don't.
Okay, so we lived in Yorkshire. So we set off from Yorkshire, which was on the northeast coast of England, and we travelled down the east coast, along the south, and up the west coast, which took us from England into Scotland. And we spent 3 months driving up the west coast of Scotland and absolutely fell in love with it. So the Isle of Skye is one of the Hebridean Islands, which is the northwest of Scotland, and it's kind of a really rugged west coast of Scotland, lots of mountains. From my house here, I have a sea view and can see mountains, the Cuillin Range, which is quite spectacular and famous with, climbers and photographers, and lots of people come here and get married and things. It's a really kind of rugged outdoor place where people elope to.
Beautiful. So thank you. So what I think is really important for people listening, and something that I really took from you, is that you, in this journey to, take your young children, you converted a library bus, didn't you? And you and your family lived in that bus, traveling around, and you still managed to do a regular meditation practice. And given that you were living in close confinement with your family, it would have been really easy to go, I haven't got the space, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the quietness, or whatever to continue. And that was really powerful for me when I kind of was watching you on your journey. Is like, Jo's still able to make this happen.
Yeah. And I guess living in the caravan before that, we lived in the caravan for 2.5 years and then moved into the bus. So obviously we had limited space. So I think a lot of the excuses I could have given myself, I don't have time, I don't have space, I really had to work hard at having strategies to work with that. So I know when Oscar was quite small, I used to have a weekly routine. So I'd travelled for my work 2 days a week, and he would come with me. So he commuted with me and would stay with my mum and my mother-in-law at that time. And so I knew that on my way home from work, for example, on a Wednesday, I would stop off and get my 20 minutes meditation in before I got back to see him at my mum's. And then on a Thursday, we would travel from Lancashire back to Yorkshire, and I would get in quite late. So I would say to my husband, I'm going to bed, but I'm going to meditate. So give me half an hour before you come to bed. Yeah. And then on a Monday, I would work at home and I would meditate at lunchtime in my office. When I say I worked at home, in my office at home. And then on Friday I would have Oscar, so often I would take him swimming, and I would, on my way back, have my eye on him in the mirror, And as soon as he nodded off, he was a toddler then, he would nodded off, I would pull over into a lay-by and get my 20 minutes meditation in. Or if Annie was with us at the weekend, and I could do something similar, she would always have a book with her, so that she actually, when she was quite young, 6 or something, I would ask her for 20 minutes to do my meditation, and she would give me that. So there was a lot of setting it up with the family, asking my family to give me that space. Sometimes I put a DVD on for the kids. We didn't have TV, but we would have laptops and DVDs. And so they would watch something while I meditated. Or we'd go to the library and my husband would read them books. And I literally have sat up in Bristol Library on the floor in the kids section, cross-legged, and meditated there, surrounded by people. So I would say there's no excuses. For me, there's no excuses.
And I think it's really powerful for people to hear the flexibility in how you do this. I came to meditation originally with this very fixed idea that you've got to be almost sat on a mountain doing it, that there's got to be these perfect conditions. And I think what I've learned from you is, the effortless approach is integrating it into everyday life. And I think you live and breathe that. And I think hopefully people listening will really get a sense of that. So I'm really conscious we've talked about meditation a lot already, but we haven't necessarily talked about what actually is meditation. So would you mind kind of sharing the definition and what your definition of it is, please?
Yeah, so I think meditation is a natural process. So I think what we're doing when we meditate is we're clearing stress and tension and potentially conditioning and fears which sit in our subconscious. So I think that to clear those is a natural process, but in the world we live in right now, we never allow ourselves to do that. We don't allow ourselves enough space and quiet and sleep, which helps to clear that stuff. So I think what meditation is just a process to help us get out of our own way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I've often used I don't know if people listening will ever remember that there was an advert that washing machines work better with Calgol because it cleans the lime scale. That's often how I think about meditation. And when I'm in a regular practice, I'm like, I just feel all this lime scale's gone from my mind. I just feel like everything's growing. It's amazing. And that's kind of my experience of it.
Yeah, I think so. In the videos that you're going to link to, there's one that talks about what meditation is, and there's a diagram. And so I'll try briefly to explain it in words without the diagram, but there's like our conscious thinking, and most of us live most of our time in that layer of conscious thinking and activity. So it relates to that diagram you talked about before of the working mum with all the things that she's got to think about and do. Take the dog to the vets, do the shopping, do the washing, just all that to keep life going. Yeah. If you are the kind of mum that has to do all that. And yeah, some people aren't. They may have a partner that helps with some of that stuff. But the busyness, we are in that conscious thinking and activity. We think, do all the time. And then underneath that, right, like deep within us, we've got this other layer, which is where all our innate qualities are. So that might be creativity, love, compassion, joy, energy, security. And that's the core of us. So I say, use what word works for you. So it might just be center, self. It might be soul, source, something more spiritual. But then between those two things, if that's who we actually are, all of those qualities, then between our conscious thinking and that is our subconscious. And in our subconscious is all this stuff that gets stored there, the lime scale that you talk about. So they're the stresses and the patterns of tension and the fears and the conditioning that life perhaps helps us, let's say, to gather as we go through life. So all the things that we think we are, all the things we tell ourselves we're not this and we're not that and we can't do this and we can't do that, that all gets stored there. And actually, I would say who we are is love and peace and joy and security and energy and compassion. But that gets blocked from coming through into our everyday life because of all this stuff that we've got stored, all the limescale. So what meditation's doing is to help us erode that limescale so that life can be more flowing and full of love and joy and security.
Amazing.
I don't know if that did the diagram justice in any way.
It did, Jo. Thank you. And so would it be fair to say that meditation is almost an umbrella term for different kinds of practices, of which you teach this effortless approach? And could you talk a little bit through how you would describe effortless meditation?
Yeah, let's think. There's lots and lots of different practices out there. And I think, I went to a Buddhist meditation center, probably did some practices on that day, but was still going, but what is meditation? Why would you do it? And then got that teaching. Found something that worked, and I've stuck with that. And now I'm at a point where I'm exploring. At the moment, actually, I've got this Buddhism exploration going on, where I'm looking at different practices, like a metta practice of loving kindness, a Tonglen practice, which is about suffering and compassion, and all different traditions have lots of different practices. So I think it can be quite confusing to come into it and go, I don't really know. And there's guided meditation and there's self-directed meditation. So and then there's breath practice, which is a really simple practice, and perhaps one we might do on the podcast if we have some time.
Brilliant, yeah.
But the practice I teach is a mantra practice. So it's a sound that helps to take us inwards, and I think it's very powerful to use a mantra to do that. For me personally, I feel like it takes me deeper than breath. Yeah. But that might be my use of breath practice. And it's not a chant. It's not something you say out loud. It's just, I say, think of it as a vibration. And that vibration draws us in towards, like, into the subconscious and helps us to clear what's there. So in terms of kind of brain science, I suppose, I think what meditation does is it allows us to slow our brainwave activity from alpha through beta to theta, which is the brainwave activity we have when we're quite young. Yeah. And when we're very receptible. Is that the right word? Receptible.
Yeah. Receptive.
It sounded wrong, like a not real word. It's when we're very receptive and we put in a lot of our conditioning. So I think it takes us back to that brainwave activity so we can clear out or reprogram some of that stuff that's in the subconscious.
Fantastic.
So what's effortless about it is actually doing the practice. It's really not difficult. So it's not about not having thoughts. It's not about an altered state of reality. It's not about being blissful for 20 minutes. It's not about having any special equipment that you use. It's not about difficult yoga poses, meditating for hours a day. It's kind of get rid of all that stuff. You can meditate, as I've already said, anywhere. At any time. I meditate on trains, planes, buses, as a passenger in the car, pulled over in a lay-by, in my bed, on the sofa, anywhere, in the library, I've already said. So it's kind of get rid of all expectations of what you think it should be, and we just show up for the practice.
Brilliant. So we've touched on some of this, but meditation seems to have grown in popularity over the years. You hear a lot of people now say that apps on their phone like Headspace and Calm, they use a lot. You hear a lot of famous people talking about it. The Oprah, Steve Jobs was a big proponent of it. And why do you think it has grown in popularity?
I think the life we live these days, I think we're always on the go. We're constantly taking in information. I think that most of us, without realizing it, are stressed all the time, and we live in a this heightened state of Stress, which is causing us to be in fight, flight, and freeze.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know that the deadlines, the challenges, the pressure we put ourselves under, and pressure that perhaps we see life putting us under, isn't a saber-toothed tiger. So we're kind of living as if it is, and we're in fight, flight, and freeze. So what that physically means is our resources are diverted into our arms and legs, so we can act out. You know, we can react with our reptilian brain, I suppose.
Fight or run away.
Yeah, and so what that means is our core functions aren't working as they could. So things like our digestion, our immune system, all of that stuff suffering, and often we're feeling the stress. So I think that's why there's more interest in meditation at the moment. So some of the benefits then of meditation, I say there's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual benefits. So some of the physical benefits, if you think, you know, if we're living in that heightened state of stress, often if we can bring that stress down, if we can reduce our reaction, it means that our core functions can work properly. I've said that. So immunity, digestion. If we don't sleep well, it can help us sleep better. It can help to normalize the body. So, you know, if we've got high blood pressure, it can help to bring it down. If we've got low blood pressure, it can help to bring it up. So there's lots and lots. If we think about all that stuff, the line scale that you talked about that is in our subconscious, that is dis-ease. Yeah. That, you know, it's taking us out of who we really are. So often we hold that in the body. So if we can meditate, it can help to clear that and clear the dis-ease or disease.
And my personal experience was
so lots of physical.
I obviously had adrenal fatigue after having my son. And so meditation was such a key part of recovering from that, because I was so much in that fight flight that I'd burnt my adrenaline and adrenal system out. And what that also meant was that when we were trying for a second child, I had huge fertility issues and kept having recurrent miscarriages. And it was through meditation and there was 3 or 4 other things that I did. But I absolutely believe that my meditation practice was part of me having my second child. I don't think that would have happened without it. So that's why I'm so passionate about this. However, being passionate about it, knowing the benefits, feeling the benefits, I still struggle to do a regular meditation practice. And I know that I'm not alone in that. So I thought it'd be useful just to speak to that, because there might be people listening to this going, yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of all the benefits and I've still not even tried it. Or if I've tried it, I still don't do it regularly. Why do you think that is?
So I think some of it is to do with the expectation. So as I said, you know, when I teach the practice, I bust some of the myths. Yeah. So if people are turning up for meditation and expecting to achieve bliss, expecting to have a clear mind, no thoughts for 20 minutes, you know, expecting it to be this or that, I think that absolutely gets in the way. So I think busting a lot of the myths helps people to do a more regular practice. And I think people that have done a regular practice and then drop off, sometimes, you know, they need reminding of that. Yeah. Remember, it's not about achieving bliss for 20 minutes. Remember, it's fine if you fall asleep. Remember, you don't have to do it at a particular time in the day. It's about fitting it in. You know, so I think there's some of that. And I also think it's like everything else that's good for us that we choose not to do. Yeah. You know, like healthy eating and exercise. And there's a part of us that's threatened by stopping. There's a part of us that's threatened by letting go. There's a part of us that's threatened by changing. Yeah. And that part of us self-sabotages.
Yeah. And I know from my own personal experience, I tend to turn to meditation when it's from a pain perspective, about when my stress is getting too much, or so I use it as a recovery rather than a proactive preemptive. And it's just reminding myself that actually if I do this regularly, I don't get to that point where I feel like I'm burning out, or I don't get to that point where I feel like I'm losing my SHIT too much. And, you know, and having it as part of a regular practice is really important for me, but it's still something I struggle with.
Yeah, and I say it's like preventative maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we can do it every day, we don't get to that same stress level. And so I've got, besides the course, I've also started this year. I began it at the beginning of this year, the Motivated to Meditate Club, which is an online offer, and it's a private Facebook group where people can subscribe, and they get just prompts every day. So it's reminders from the course, it's the benefits of the practice, it's reminders of the myths, it's questions to help them, look at what's working for them, helping them to fit it in, tips and techniques for fitting it into life. So they come out daily, which is also then when I appear in people's feeds, that's a prompt for people to think, oh, I haven't meditated today. So there's that. And then also it includes 8 Zoom calls a month. So we just get together and meditate 8 times a month. There's set times and people join, and I lead them through the practice that I teach. And so they get to come together in a group and do that. And that's really working. The people that are part of the club are really finding. In fact, I had one person that did 100 days of consecutive meditation this year, who was part of that group, which is absolutely incredible. This is somebody that told me she was too busy to fit it in. She is a working mum of 3 children. And she did not just 100 days, 100 consecutive days. She didn't miss.
That's phenomenal.
That's like, wow.
and I'm part of that group and joined a meditation actually this week that I'd had a particularly challenging day. And I think we joined on the call at 8 o'clock. So it's about half an hour, isn't it, Jo? And I came off that feeling infinitely better after an incredibly challenging day. So, and I find being part of that really works for me. That I need that almost like accountability to, okay, I know that I've got this and I'm going to show up. So, and I'll put links to that in the show notes if people are interested. So I'm conscious of we've got still a little bit to cover. So if there was somebody listening to this that says, yes, I need this meditation stuff in my life, where would they start?
Well, you've already mentioned there's lots of apps out there. So there's Headspace and Calm, and I think they're a good place to start. And I think just something like a really simple breath practice is really good. I wondered if we should do one, actually.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I could lead in. I know we don't have lots of time, but perhaps just a 5-minute practice, and I'll just lead through it and see how we go.
Yeah,
is that all
lovely.
right?
Yeah.
So if we just kind of try and switch from that into meditate, I'll probably put my meditation voice on now.
Oh, I love your meditation voice. Go for it.
I have someone that I meditate with frequently, and she says, just do that thing you do. And I think I must do something where I'm settling down and I go,
yeah.
And it's like, that's a depression, like just a letting go of everything. So if you want to just get yourself comfy, just settle down. Perhaps close your eyes or drop your gaze. I guess it depends where you're listening to this. Don't do it if you're driving. Pull over. And just notice your body. Just notice what's here now, accepting what you find without any judgment. Now bring awareness to your thoughts. Just notice your thoughts and how effortlessly they float through the mind. Doesn't matter what they're about. You might notice thoughts about your physical body, sounds you can hear, plans that you're making, thoughts about the past or the future, all just thoughts. Just notice they're there without any judgment. Sound of the car starting outside, if you can hear that. All just thoughts. Now gently bring awareness to breath. Without changing your breathing in any way, just be aware of the in-breath and the out-breath, the rise and fall of the chest. Just have a lazy awareness of breath. Sometimes it helps just to notice the pause between the in-breath and out-breath, and the pause between the out-breath and in-breath. Just to observe that gap. Without changing the breath. It's just a very lazy awareness, so it's not a focusing or concentrating on the breath, which can sometimes make us change the breath. It's just watching the breath as it happens. And what we might notice as we watch the breath is we drift off onto thought. I don't know if you can hear all the sounds that are happening here.
I can.
But as I'm having my awareness of breath, I'm drifting off onto thought about the spreader outside. They're gritting the road. And as we drift off onto thought, that's okay. So there's no judgment of the drifting onto thought. When we notice we've drifted onto something else other than the breath, there's a real gentle return. So a lazy awareness of breath, just returning to that awareness of breath. Each time we drift off onto something else, just when we notice, very gently bringing that awareness back to breath. Maybe we'll just have a couple of minutes just to do that. Awareness of breath and noticing if we drift, bringing our awareness back to breath. And when you feel ready, just open your eyes. I don't know if that was long enough to have drifted very far, but to come back into the space.
Thank you, Jo, because whilst that was only kind of a short insight, as part of a podcast like this, I think it's quite a powerful insight. And I always notice that when I come to do a meditation, my mind's quite resistant of it. So sitting here as the podcast kind of host, I was like, how much time have we got? Are we doing this for too long? Da, da, da. But my body's like, thank you for doing that. And I think that's often my experience of meditation, that head and body kind of conflict. But I kind of, even after that short amount of time, I come out of it with my shoulders about 2 centimeters lower because they just drop into this, thank you. Needed a bit of that. So if there's just one thing that you hope a working mum who's listening to this podcast takes away from listening to you, what would you want that to be?
I think it's that, even if you've got a busy life and a busy mind, adopting a regular meditation practice is possible. I think I kind of, that's what I've lived. And that a practice can bring so many benefits, and that the practice isn't difficult. Lots of people say, I can't meditate, I can't clear my mind, I can't meditate, it's too difficult, I've tried to do it, it's too hard. And I would just say it doesn't have to be.
And I think you're living and breathing that. And that's why being part of your community is so powerful for me, because it's that reminder of how my resistance gets in the way. So where can people... Absolutely. And although your name is Jo Royle, you will always be Effortless Jo to me. So
I think my branding's changed over the years, but I know when we met, my website was Effortless Jo. Yeah. And so, I was known to lots of people as Effortless Jo.
So where can we find out more about you and what you do?
So again, I am going through another branding exercise, another kind of just looking at what my offer is for the world. It's always changing, and this is part of it. That's one of them. So where I would love you to go is to my YouTube channel, which is currently branded as Sky Meditation and Retreats, I think. And Nikki, you said you could share the link after for that.
Yeah.
So in there, it talks a little bit more. There's 4 videos, talks a little bit more about my story, the benefits of the practice. I'm aware we talked about physical benefits, but we didn't get on to mental, emotional, spiritual. So there's a lot more of that in there. It's got the diagram that explains what meditation is, why do it, and talks a little bit about this idea of effortless and how that differs from perhaps some of the practices, but also from what we're taught in life, that we have to try hard and strive and be determined, and this actually is about getting out of the way. So sometimes that can get in the way for us. We want it to be harder than it is. So the YouTube channel is the best place to go. And then just my contact details. I think if people are interested in learning with me, I do I teach online.
Yeah.
So the videos make up part of my online offer, so they're free to watch. And then I do an online teaching with people, so 1-to-1 over the phone or Zoom or something like that. Maybe just over an hour and a half. Teach the practice of going in and out of meditation. And then there's some follow-up videos which explain more about what happens when we meditate, what we might experience, and then the transformational benefits, what we might notice over time if we adopt a regular practice. So the best way to link people in with that is just my contact details. I'm not all kind of streamlined and automated, but I can liaise with people who are interested in learning with me.
And I'll put all those details on the show notes, which will be at Wisdom for Working Mums. So wisdom, FOR, for workingmums.co.uk/26, because this is episode 26. So people can find all the information there. So wisdom for workingmums.co.uk/26. Thank you so much, Jo, for sharing.
And I'd just like to make an offer, actually, Nikki, just before we close. Just if people are interested in learning with me, I'd be happy to do a couple of months free membership to the Motivated to Meditate Club. So I'm really keen that when people learn, they do actually make this a regular practice. So if people want to learn with me, that offers there of the ongoing support then for a couple of months.
Brilliant. So that would be the online course. And if you perhaps you listen to this podcast, Wisdom for Working Mums, they'll get 2 months free membership to the Motivated to Meditate.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jo, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom.
Oh, thanks, Nikki. It's been lovely to chat. And I shall see you on the Motivated to Meditate Club soon.
Definitely.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.